is a pleasure to meet you.
My pleasure.
Pleasure to meet you. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to do this. Like I said before, I know you're a busy guy. So I'm real excited to talk to you. We only have a little bit of time, about an hour or so. There's a couple of subjects I want to really get into. I could, quite frankly, I could do a whole few hours with you about your career. Very long career in New Mexico and working in law. So I do want to cover that for a little bit. When did you start working? What made you want to get into the law field in general, moving into the DA's office? We'll start on that first. What made you want to start on the career that you're on now?
Well, I grew up in a household where my dad was a lawyer. I got to see him help people. And so I followed in his footsteps in some respects. And when I was in college, I thought, well, I'll go be into business, and ended up going to law school, and the rest is history. I started a practice after going in the DA's office for a number of years, about 5 years in the DA's office. Then I went ahead and opened up my own practice and was able to help people, all kinds of people, and I'm really so grateful for that.
Was there a specific field that, say when you opened up your practice, was there a specific type of case that you were taking at the time that you specialized in? Did you have a team that kind of just took everything? What did that look like?
No, it was pretty much me and my wife, Jackie, but and she did a lot of family law and a lot of real estate law, and I just did some trial work to start with, just various kind of cases that would end up in the courtroom, because I had that experience from the DA's office of being in there for 5 years. So it was a great experience in that sense. I felt comfortable in a courtroom, which most lawyers don't. You spend enough time in a courtroom, you get used to it. You have an advantage over those that never show up in the courtroom. So I ended up eventually doing a lot of plaintiffs' work, helping people who were hurt in a car accident, no fault of their own, or were wrongfully terminated. Employment law, I did a lot of that. Or wrongfully accused of a crime, stood up for a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and was able to be an advocate for the little guy. That was a great feeling. I mean, whether or not I was taking on a big insurance company, whether or not it was taking on the government who was going after my client for one thing or another, that's very rewarding, that you know that you're in someone's corner fighting for them. And now, in 23, January 23, I was appointed to the district attorney's office. And the chance to get to represent the whole county and everybody in this county and try and work every day to make this a safer place, man, you talk about something really, really energizing for me.
I want to get in a little bit about the falsely accused cases. I'm very interested in that, the wrongfully accused.
Yeah.
Very interested in that. So just kind of define that for people who don't know what that specific kind of case is. The way I'm understanding is that's somebody who has already been convicted of a crime.
No. I'm talking about someone who's being charged with a crime who didn't do it.
Okay.
Or who didn't violate the law, or didn't violate the law to the extent that the government may be charging them. There's all kinds of different charges for different types of crime, property or violent crime or something like that. I've represented all kinds of folks. I've represented people accused of DWI. I've represented people who were accused of murder. I was able to get people not guilty.
I'm curious about the DWI. Because to most people, I feel like that would be kind of cut and dry. Hey, if there's footage of you, or if you blew on a breathalyzer or something like that, where it's like you were driving drunk and there's some evidence, whether that's again the breathalyzer or they take you in and they do any kind of thing to prove that there's alcohol in your system. How do you come across a case where someone is being wrongfully accused of DWI?
Well, Improvised Intelligence is sponsored by the amazing people over at Chop Chili. If you've been a long time listener to the podcast, you know that this is my favorite brand of chili here in New Mexico. Pretty much put it on every meal that I can. They've got red chili, green chili. My personal favorite is this blend of the red and the green. I think this stuff is phenomenal. They also have frozen bags of green chili that you can order directly from their website at chopchilico.com. You can also find them in stores around the state of New Mexico at Sprouts, Albertsons, Farmers Country Market, John Brooks, Keller's Farm Store, Lowe's Market. And you can also find them in Albuquerque, Santa Fe, Hobbs, Gallup, Tucumcari. And for all my friends in Texas, they are in El Paso. Again, chopchilico.com. Go get yourself some amazing chili. Now back to the podcast.
So remember, when you are wrongfully charged, for example, the state has to prove their case. And I, as the prosecutor now, and we've had great success last year, for example, in prosecuting DWIs with an 84% conviction rate, with over 2,500 cases, despite the APD DWI scandal that went on in Albuquerque over the last several years. Our office, the DA's office, has been hugely successful on prosecuting and holding people accountable for drunk driving. But when I was in private practice, I represented folks who were accused of various crimes at times. And listen, the thing is that's really important about our justice system is, yes, it's an adversarial system where one side is against the other and it's adversarial. But we want to always make sure that the government, and I welcome this as a prosecutor, we always want to make sure that the government proves something beyond a reasonable doubt and has the ability to do that and proves all elements of a crime.
Right.
Because we don't want people who are not guilty of the crime being convicted of the crime just because we decided to make sure we didn't follow all the things we should follow. That's the last thing we want. We want to make sure we dot every I and cross every T and know exactly, and at least have a jury or a judge know exactly that yes, the state did meet all the elements, and therefore that person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
And through that process of elimination with somebody you're working their case and defending them in a DWI situation, is that basically what you're doing as a defense lawyer?
Well, as a defense lawyer, certainly you're making sure there was reasonable suspicion for the stop, that there's articulable facts that the officer gives to why he believes a crime was either committed or being committed. There's probable cause to make an arrest. There's reasonable suspicion and to conduct a DWI investigation. There's enough groundwork and all the foundation's been laid to get a breath score in evidence. These are evidentiary, procedural requirements, but they're really important for the foundation of our justice system, because the last thing we want, I think everybody, including my office 100% right now, the last thing we ever want to see happen is someone convicted wrongfully.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. So you get into the district attorney's office in 2023, and you are the DA.
Yes,
when you assume that job, what are you looking at as your list of priorities? Because there's a lot to take care of.
Yep.
So what are like if there's an order of work, what's like your top three that you're tackling when you enter in 2023?
Well, in January of 2023, I become district attorney. The governor appoints me to that. The thing that we have to recognize right off the bat is, how is the office doing? The people that work there, we have 330 people that work there. At that time, we didn't, though. We were short on lawyers. We only had 78 lawyers, and we had 120 or so positions for lawyers. We were short. The number one priority I had was to boost up the staff of the district attorney's office, and I'll tell you why. We have homicide prosecutors in our major crimes division. Each one of them had a caseload of 50 homicides apiece at the time I came in there. That's a heck of a lot of homicide cases for one prosecutor, 50 of them. These aren't cases you pick up the file and walk off the court and just try. They take a lot of work, a lot of workup, a lot of investigation, a lot of understanding of what all the facts are, every single one of them. Because to truly do justice, you have to present a good, solid case to a jury and let them determine guilt or not guilty. This isn't all about convictions in our office. It's about making sure justice is done every time. That's the job of a prosecutor, and we take that very seriously down there. So one of the first things I had to do was hire more lawyers. And because we've hired over 80 lawyers in 3 years, we now have an average caseload for homicide prosecutors of 23. That is a big difference. They don't feel the crushing sense of, oh my gosh, I've got so much work. It's a big difference. And we are able, listen, in 3 years, it's a sobering number. We've convicted over 330 people of murder in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, it's sobering, and it's a good thing in the sense that It shows how hard my office is working and what good work they're
But
doing.
it's also reflecting how much work there is to do.
Right. Exactly. And that's the sobering part of it. It's because it's just far too high. I will tell you overall, though, that was my number one priority, was staffing up. My number two priority was making sure we are putting all the systems in place, that we're working well with the courts, that we actually have a system to handle the enormous amount of cases. When I first got in there, we were having 16,000 cases referred to our office by law enforcement a year. This last year, 25,000 cases were referred to us. And I'll tell you, even though it doesn't sound like it makes sense, it does. Crime is actually going down in Albuquerque, in Bernalillo County. We've had 39% less violent crime right now. Our property crime rate is down.
What do you think is contributing to that? Because just to go on a little side note here, because you're right, crime, a lot of people don't feel it for understandable reasons.
Right.
But crime is going down nationally, which is a good
Yes.
thing. Violent crime is going down. What do you think the reason is for that?
Well, listen, not only is violent crime going down, but violent crime is going down significantly in Albuquerque. We had a real spike. I mean, if you go back to 2022, I think there was 120 some murders.
Right.
That's a huge number for a community our size. It's gone down significantly. And I'm very pleased with that and very proud of that. I think, number one, most importantly, law enforcement is collaborating more than ever in this community. APD, state police, BCSO, the federal agencies, our office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, we're collaborating. We're really working together well. And in large part, you got to thank law enforcement. Law enforcement does incredible work. They've closed out more cases than ever before over there at the homicide unit at APD. They're doing good work. And I think it makes a big difference when everybody's working together. I mean, the results speak for themselves. And I do have one caveat to what I just said about crime going down. Overall, crime is getting better, except for one terrible, troubling issue for me, and it's what keeps me up at night. It's juvenile crime, juvenile violent crime with guns is going in the exact opposite direction. It continues to climb, and it is so scary because we all know we were kids. We all make mistakes when we're kids. But to see this glorification of guns amongst 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, the Glock switches that they put on to make these semi-automatic weapons into automatic weapons. That's scary stuff out there when you have a 16-year-old driving around in a stolen car shooting out a window.
Yep.
It's just terrible things happen. And I can't tell you how sad it is that I've indicted over 70 juveniles for murder since I've been district attorney.
It's not surprising.
That is horrific, though.
Yeah.
It is terrible. And that's why I've been so adamant about how we need to update the children's code, the laws that affect juvenile crime, get them more behavior health, get them more mental health.
That first point you just made about updating the laws, can you dig into that a little bit? What needs, in your opinion, was to be updated?
So listen, we have a children's code, which is also known as the Delinquency Act. That children's code has not been updated since before 1993. That was before the iPhone was even invented. The crimes that we're seeing on the streets, some because of social media, are so much different. We need a children's code that matches what we're seeing on the streets. I proposed 36 different amendments to the children's code a couple years back because I saw this as continuing to get worse and not better. And we haven't done anything up at the legislature, to be honest with you. There's been really no movement on juvenile crime. And it's not just, I want to extend the jurisdiction to 25. Right now, you get up to 21, you're let out. That's it. You're done. If you commit second-degree murder right now, you're 17 years old and you blow away a 16-year-old and you're convicted of second-degree murder, you're into your 21, and then you're out. Try explaining that to the family of the victim who died.
And that's based strictly because they are under 18 years old.
They're under
being
18.
tried
That's
as a
that's
child.
it.
Okay.
That's right. Now, currently, there's serious youthful offense can be tried as an adult. There's only one crime that fits in that, and that's first degree, premeditated murder.
Right.
There's only one. That's the only one. We've tried to expand that a little bit for second degree murder and also shooting at or from a motor vehicle. But despite the fact that I want to have serious consequences, we also need to have just as much behavior health for them, family intervention.
Preventative.
When
right.
you get caught stealing your first car with a broken steering column and trying to haul ass from the cops down the road, we ought to have some kind of behavior health swooping in to go, what's going on? Why were you out at 4 a.m? What's going on in your family? What's going on that you feel compelled to steal cars? We're not doing that. The reality is that doesn't get there right away. They don't even spend a night in the D home. There's no consequences or therapeutic in that sense. There's none of that. We have so much work to do on the juvenile crime issue. It's really pretty amazing.
Well, no, I completely agree, and I get it. Like there are, there's people make mistakes when they're kids, when they're young. The frontal lobe hasn't formed yet.
Yeah.
They don't have full decision making. But I agree that there is something different, and this is purely like I don't have kids. My friends that do have kids, they're all under 5 years old. But there is, just from what I'm seeing on social media, there is something different in the culture of kids between the ages of 12 and 17. There is something different where it's just a lot more, how do I put it? It's a lot more violent and a lot more flagrant. And maybe it is the glorification of guns, because I'm a 2A person, but there is, it's again, I think it is a culture, and I think, and I'm sure it goes into gangs, the prevalence of gangs in the culture, and the prevalence of single parent households that leads into it. And there's a lot of things that go into it, but yeah, the idea that we have the same code from 30 years ago plus, it doesn't make any sense. Why do you think? And we'll get into red tape issues when we go into actually you getting in the running for governor, but what do you think it is on this specific thing with the child code not being updated? What red tape gets in the way, and why do you think that's there in the first place?
So the legislators up in Santa Fe who make the laws and who would be the ones responsible for changing the laws, they fall down in two different ways. They either fall down, give them all the behavior health they want, or lock them up and throw away the key. I'm here in the middle. I want both. I want all the help we can get behavior health-wise, but if they commit first-degree murder, we have to take them out of the community. We can't, second-degree murder, we can't allow that to continue if they're that violent. The problem that we're seeing is, and social media is a lot of this, a kid right now who's pissed off at the middle schooler can go out and buy a gun, go on the Telegram, that app, go on there, which is, by the way, just a cesspool of criminal activity from, drug dealing, gun dealing, child sex, porn. It's disgusting. So what we have to do, and by the way, this kid that can go out and say anybody got a strap out there, someone says, clicks back, you bet, I got one, $250. They meet up on a street corner 3 hours later, and the 15-year-old's got a gun. That's crazy.
It's that simple. Yeah.
It's that simple, and it happens.
A lot of people probably hear that and think you're full of it, but that's exactly how easy it is.
And then they get the gun.
Yeah.
And hopefully they don't get into any kind of issue out there when they're buying the gun, when everybody's got a gun on them and that kind of crazy stuff. Then they go back, they get on social media, take a selfie with them holding a gun.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they get some likes.
Yep.
This is what makes me popular.
Yep.
I got to go out and show what I can do with this gun now. So let's go steal the car that I did last week. Let's steal another one. This time I'm going to go down the road and shoot out the window and see and video all that. By the way, the younger crowd, they videotape everything, and you know that. Everything. There's nothing they do in life that is not videotaped. Yep. Not that hard to prove once we get that phone, right? Yep. But it is really scary. And I own guns. I'm not trying to take everybody's guns away, but these kids with guns, we know they're not. We don't make good decisions when we're 15 years of age. Okay, whether or not it's stealing liquor out of your parents' closet, but it's different if you're out there with a gun now. It's.
Well, I mean, so because I don't say what company I work for when I'm doing this, but I work for a security company, and there was an incident. Probably be as vague as possible. There was an incident next to one of the sites that I manage, and it was exactly that. It was I believe, a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old, or it was a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old. Either way, I know at least one minor was involved. It was a gun deal that went wrong. They shoot at each other. I know the male passed away on the way to the hospital, and the female made it by the time they got her to the hospital. But it happens all the time, and it's incredibly unfortunate. And one thing that you brought up was they want to either go one way, which is lock them up, get rid of them, or it's a great term that I've heard for stuff like this is like it's called a suicidal compassion, where it's only behavioral health, no consequences, just the soft solutions. Do you think, because the way that reads to me, do you think that's because of political party issues where if they're seen as someone that's too punitive and it's too throw them away, they're seen too far on one side of the aisle, or if they're too much on the we need behavioral health, we need mental health facilities or mental health resources, they're seen as another side of the aisle? Do you think that feeds into it, where they're like, well, I want to think about my career, I don't want to be seen as too much of a leftist or too much of a right winger? And do you think that's falling into it?
A little bit. I think that falls into everything when you
Right.
start talking about the
Well, I just asked about
legislature,
this.
right?
It's like the obvious answer is what you're bringing up, is you need both. But what do
Absolutely.
you think is keeping these people on one track?
Because
or
there
another?
are some people and there are advocates out there and special interest groups that say you can never put a kid in jail for one day. It's so traumatic for them.
I was going to say special
All
interest
I'm
groups
saying,
too.
depending on what's going on, you spend a night in the D home, and a night. Let's spend a night in the D home when you steal your first car. You don't get mom's cooking. You don't get to go on social media and talk with your friends. You don't get to see any of your friends. It's not a real comfortable setting you're in. What's wrong with that for one night? So someone that consequence, a kid will learn something from that. You hope.
Hopefully.
Because what happens right now is they never even spend that night when they steal that car. They get dropped back off at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning at the parents' house. And they say, come back to court in 3 days.
Right.
That's not working. We know it's not working. Let's instead get them figured out where we get behavior health in right away and find out in family intervention services, what's going on? Why are you out at 4 in the morning stealing cars? What is causing you to do that? That question needs to be asked right off the bat. What can we do to make sure you're getting the mental health treatment that you may need as a person, or your family is getting that family kind of counseling? Or if your father or you're a single parent, you're the single parent mom, either one of them is working 2 jobs, let's figure out how to make some adjustments in the families so that the 15-year-old isn't out at 4 in the morning.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
But then, by the way, when you steal your second one, let's put you in the D home for a few days. Let's learn something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise they learn they can get away with it.
And this is a great topic that I want to use transition to the issue of ROR in New Mexico.
Yeah.
So for people who don't understand what that acronym means, basically release on recognizance. Being the DA, I think you're one of the best people to ask about this. It seems to most people that I speak to that, and I'd have to agree, that system is failing. It's leading to, even though crime is going down, but it led to the rise in crime. It's, I feel like even with crime going down, it is a barrier to it going down quicker. We'll just start generally. What are your views on ROR? Should we even have it? Should the bail system come back? Like what are your general views on ROR?
So it's right now, the state of the law in New Mexico is you're either held or you're released on certain conditions of release. The reason for this was bail reform. I think it was 2016, it might have been 15, somewhere in that area. A constitutional amendment was put on the ballot that the voters overwhelmingly approved. More than 80% of the voters voted for this constitutional amendment, which basically says you either stay in because there's no conditions of release that can provide the safety for the community from you, or you're released with certain conditions. The reason behind all that was because, I think rightfully so in many circumstances, people were staying in jail on the bond system because they just didn't have the money to bond out. They couldn't afford the $100 to the bail bondsman, the 10% down, so that they could get a $1,000 bond. They didn't have the $100, so they didn't ever get out. They sat in jail for 4 months until they had trial, or 5 months, if it was a smaller level crime, or much longer if it was a more serious crime, because it takes a longer time to get the more serious crimes to trial. So I think most people would agree that you shouldn't be held in jail just because of your financial status. And that's what I think was the impetus for that law. However, what's happened is a system now that I think that too oftentimes we think, at least we have in the past, and maybe not so much anymore, that if you put an ankle GPS monitor, an ankle bracelet, as they often refer to, a GPS monitor on their ankle, then you'll know what they're doing. But that GPS monitor doesn't stop someone from committing another crime. And too often than not, we see people who get out who are already accused of a violent crime, who are now committing another violent crime while out on the first case. And that's so concerning. We have been successful in detaining more people. We file a pretrial detention motion on the felonies that we believe someone should not be let back out.
Yeah, I saw you talking about that, the recent ABQ Journal Forum.
We filed more of those than at any time in the history of our office. Really important stuff. We don't file them willy-nilly. We file them because we believe this person should not be let out in the community. That we don't think there's a condition of release that's going to protect the community from this person. We have held more people than at any time in the history, and we filed more of those motions at any time in the history. We're getting better at it. We're holding more. It's ultimately up to a judge to make that determination, and rightfully so. That's what we have judges for. They live in the community too. They know there's a crime problem in Albuquerque, New Mexico. But obviously, we would like to see 100% of those motions granted that we file. And we don't file them on every felony. We don't. If someone has a controlled substance, it's their first offense, they pick up they have a fentanyl pill in their pocket, or they were just seen by a cop smoking open air fentanyl on the street corner over there in the International District or anywhere in this town, and a police officer arrests them. That's 4th-degree felony. We try and get them the help and divert them into really taking care of their issue as being an addict, as opposed to trying to keep them in jail until they have that trial for that. So there are instances all the time where we don't file pretrial detention motions. But if you commit a violent crime, we absolutely do. A couple of years back, I went up to Santa Fe, the legislature, and I tried to encourage the legislature to adopt the federal system. The federal system is constitutional under the federal Constitution. It basically says if you commit a certain type of crime, like murder, like shooting at or from a vehicle, armed robbery, those kind of crimes, kidnapping, rape, something like that, that there is a it's called rebuttable presumption. You are presumed you're going to be staying in until that trial happens, unless you can rebut that and show how you can be let out in the community with conditions that make it safe for the community. And we have not had any success convincing the New Mexico legislature that that's something we should do.
So what that sounds like to me, I guess my question to that would be, why would you want to implement that? Because it sounds like there's an opening for people that commit or are accused of committing felonies, because they are accused at this point, accused of committing felonies, to get out.
No, it's the opposite.
Okay. I'm understanding this wrong.
Rebuttable presumption. What you're saying is wrong. Rebuttable presumption means we're presuming that you're going to have to stay in.
Okay.
But you can rebut that defendant. You can rebut that if you believe you can show that we can find a way for you to be out in the community and it'll be safe for the community.
Okay, I see. So with the
if you're charged with armed robbery in the federal system,
yeah,
you are going to be held unless you can rebut the presumption.
So yeah, it puts the responsibility of showing that you should be allowed to be out in the community on the person being accused rather than, okay, I agree with that. Okay, that makes sense. I'll say, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to advocate for that. Okay. So back to the ROR and the bail system, because it always did perplex me. And again, you're one of the top guys to talk to about this. Because I see the argument where it's like, well, these people could be held based upon financial situations. They can't, afford the down payment to the bail bondsman to be able to get out, and so on and so forth. Again, hindsight isn't always 20/20, but looking back on that, would a alternate solution could have been to reform bail in the way that maybe there is a cap on how much bail can be set? Is that even possible?
No, that was possible, but you know, I don't think we're going to get anywhere in the near future in that. We as prosecutors need to get better at continuing to get better at presenting the facts to judges so that they understand why we feel so strongly that this person should not be let out because of their violent past. Or the other reason is because look in the past at their priors where they don't follow court orders.
Yeah.
This person's been charged before, and in that previous case, they never followed a court order. They didn't even show up for court.
Yeah.
Why are we going to let them out now? So those are some of the things that are considered by the court, and some of the things we argue.
Yeah, so that's because I completely agree with that. And there is, and I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not well read on the specific statistics on the DUI issue in Albuquerque. I just know that it's a very horrible thing, and there is a understanding of the public that we have a ton of people that run around with 3, 4, 5, 6 DUIs, DWIs on their record, and they're not just completely locked away. Is that a real problem? I feel like it is, but I feel like it's worth asking. Is that a real problem where repeat offenders of that specific crime, DWI, basically aren't being punished hard enough? And is that something that is worth, let's say you do get into the role of governor, you have harsher crackdowns on people that are driving while intoxicated of any kind of substance?
Well, driving while intoxicated is a real issue in New Mexico. Certainly it's an issue in Albuquerque. We've prosecuted over 2,500, I believe, the most recent number, more than that. DWIs just in the last year.
I was going to say, in a year, 2,500.
Yeah. And so we have a great conviction rate at it, despite the whole APD scandal with police officers and doing all that, dismissing cases, not showing up for court, things like that. Right. We know how serious that issue is, but despite that, my office has been really, really effective. We have, I want to say 14 prosecutors that work on DWIs, domestic violence, and shoplifting every day. They're in and out of court. So, yes, it's a problem. You asked specifically about whether or not the enhanced penalties as we go up the number of times. So the first three times you get convicted of DWI, it's still considered a misdemeanor. So the third time it's up to a year. The second and third time it's up to a year in jail with minimum mandatories. If you're aggravated and second or third, it's minimum mandatories. The fourth time becomes a felony. And then it escalates from there. And the number of years, a minimum sentence, the number of years do go up. I do feel like we continue to need to focus on cracking down. And BCSO and APD and state police do a lot of work on roadblocks. Our office, as I just described, there's 365 days in a year. We're prosecuting over 2,500 of them in a year. We can tell how many darn DWIs there are in this town, right?
Were there and this is definitely a personal insight. Were there a lot of road like DWI checkpoints on New Year's Eve this last New Year's?
I don't remember specifically. I'm sure there probably was one of them.
Okay, because I didn't drink New Year's Eve, but I went to go pick up my girlfriend. She was with her family, and I drove because I'm off of Comanche and Kendall area, so I drove from there deep into Rio Rancho and back, and didn't hit one checkpoint. And I was shocked. I was like, how in the world? I was like, I stayed sober because I wanted to pass the test. Yeah. I've never, I think I've been to maybe 2 checkpoints in my entire life. And I was like, I specifically, I did not drink, so I knew that so I could pass this. I could tell the officer, I have not drank.
There's an example of how roadblocks are effective, right? In that sense, DWI roadblocks are effective because they get people worried and they take extra precaution not to drink and drive, right? Yeah. I think that's important. I think that shows that some of that law enforcement activity is long lasting. It's not just that evening but look, I don't know the exact number.
Yeah, I don't expect it. I was just curious.
But I do think that, it's a real problem and we got to stay focused on it. We don't need to, we are doing a lot about it, but we can always do more.
And one thing I want to ask about your career before we get into running for governor, as I was doing a little bit of homework, it was probably about 8 years ago or so, I saw a news headline, and I couldn't find like real like definitive stuff more than just like, hey, this is what's going on. But it was a case that you were heading. At the time, the governor, I believe, was Susana Martinez, and it was over some government employees that were. One of them got caught on an audio file talking about how they never use their government email, and they always use a personal email to hide stuff and all of that. The reason I ask about that is working to prosecute. Do you remember that case?
Vaguely.
Okay. The reason I ask about it is just being able to.
It was an employment case dealing with someone who worked up at the state penitentiary, I believe.
Okay.
And it was a termination, and so that's a while back for me. I don't
Yeah.
remember all the
Because again,
details.
the very bare stuff that I read about it, the understanding that I got was from the governor's office. And if it wasn't, we'll drop it and move on. But I was just curious about like, not just that, but any interactions up until now that you've had working with the governor's office. Have you been able to gain insights into how the governor's office works and like all of the issues that they have? Because it's always interesting to me, because I've certainly been there, obviously not in government, but I'm working at a company, or like the little bit of time I spent in the military, where I see the people that are in either a position or they're in an office that I want to get into eventually. I'm like, I could do this shit so much better than these people. Like, I see what you're doing wrong. In your career leading up to running for governor, are there things are there things that just stand out to you about how the governorship has been ran in the last years, in the last 10 plus years?
Everybody has a different style.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. Some work with the legislature in different ways. You know, I've been around here since 1981 in this state, so it's been a long time. So they all work differently. They all have different priorities based on the times that we're living in at whatever time that is, right? So I think you'll see different governors operate differently. I can't really tell you this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to do compared to other governors, other than there are things that this governor, for example, has done really well, like this early child care movement, to where every kid basically, and I think she's done a great job at it, every kid is, from the time they're born until the time they graduate college or trade school, should they choose to go to a trade school or college, it's free. Their education's free all the way through, from early childhood before they get into the kindergarten, all the way until they graduate. That's a great thing. We're the only state in the union that has that now. That's exciting. They're going to be implementing more and more of it. That's big. We have $11 billion in a trust fund to take care of paying for this. Yep. This is big. It really is. That's a great thing, for example. For the other extreme, I mean, behavior health right now, mental health is such a problem in our state, and we are throwing a lot of resources towards it, but we're not coordinated at all. And Susana Martinez, when she was governor, dismantled behavior health in this state. And we are paying for it now in a huge way.
Just briefly, what did she do to dismantle things?
I'm just not dismantled it and fired every entity that was working on it, and had some Arizona folks come in and start working on it. We have a system right now where if you want, and I divert so many people out of the criminal justice system to try and get them help, whether or not it's because of their mental health issues, their drug addiction issues, or a combination of both. We want them to get the treatment, and because I can't prosecute my way out of this fentanyl issue. I can prosecute the drug traffickers, and I will all day long. But the folks who are suffering from being addicted to this stuff, which is so powerful and it does such destruction to human beings, we don't have enough treatment for them. And we don't have enough beds. We don't have enough places for them to go and to get the help they need. And we spend a lot of money on it, but it's not coordinated at all. For example, we need a real-time dashboard of where every bed is available in the state of New Mexico at any given time so that we can get people into the help they need. If you walk up to a homeless encampment and there's someone that's hit rock bottom, they've smoked their last fentanyl pill, now they're going to have to go out and shoplift or something else to get more money so they can buy their next pill. Before we get to that point, let's get them the help they need. So that social worker that walks up to them and says, hey, you need help? Yeah, I need help. I'm ready to get some help. They ought to have an iPad in front of them, that social worker, and be able to say, you know what, there's a bed two blocks from here that takes Medicaid, or there's a bed 4 blocks from here that takes private health insurance, or there's a bed 1 block from here that doesn't take anything. You just come on in, they'll help you. But we need to know that information right then and there, because I've been in a situation where I've been in court in the morning. I watched a judge say to an addict, "I'd love to get you help, but there are no beds available." That afternoon, I was in a facility that had 14 beds available.
Yeah.
The coordination's not there. And there's so many good people working in this on this issue of addiction recovery and mental health, but it's not coordinated. If you're a nonprofit working in the state of New Mexico and you get state of New Mexico money, taxpayer money, I think it's not too much to ask that you report how many beds you have available every morning.
I completely agree. And clearly this is something that you're very passionate about,
Yep.
and that this is something you want to take care of. So we'll use that transition into your gubernatorial campaign. Obviously, there's been a lot of, to put it lightly, there's been a lot of hiccups and road bumps with things in Albuquerque, specifically like the Gateway Recovery Center, the West Side Shelter. As the governor, what would you be able to do in conjunction with the mayor of Albuquerque to ensure that the facilities that we have in Albuquerque are being ran properly, funded properly, utilized properly, like you're saying, with being able to report properly who has the amount of beds at what given time? What can you do as the governor to improve all of that?
So one I just mentioned, the Department of Health needs to actually step up and have a real dashboard up live. Because right now, just to say, I'm just going on another tangent for a second. If you're a parent and your kid walks into the breakfast table and says, I'm addicted to drugs, I need help. What website do you go to right now to get that help? Let's say you're a Medicaid family, you're on Medicaid. What's the website you go to find the help? Who do you call right now to get that help? My kid's got an addiction problem. I need help. I need to get him in help. Where do you go? Nobody knows where that is. We should have that system in place. It's so important. And so we need to have a real-time dashboard. We need to have You asked what we can do with the city. Let's put everybody in a room, number one. Let's really have an understanding of who's doing what. Okay?
That's a long conversation, or short.
Or short in some instances. But let's really get together and figure out what are you all doing and how coordinated are we and how are we addressing the people that are suffering out on the streets? Yeah. What are we doing? Yeah. That's where I think that's where you start. I think it's too important not to, because I think the single biggest thing you can do with crime, besides more cops on the street, and that's obviously a challenge, but we're going to continue to work on that. The biggest thing we can do to stop the revolving door, the property crime, the addiction, I get 15 cases referred every morning to our office for people for possession of fentanyl. The biggest thing we can do is really enhance our behavior health, addiction recovery systems, the mental health and the addiction recovery. If we do that, and first of all, we hit the demand for fentanyl, and we take that out of the equation, we're going to do a lot better overall when it comes to all the fentanyl drives a lot of crime out there. And people, when they're high on fentanyl or whatever drug, meth or whatever, they screw up. They make terrible decisions. They hurt people. They steal things. They steal things all the time. So one of the biggest things we can do is really focus on this behavioral health. Get the people, the addicts that need the help, because like I said, I can't prosecute my way out of the addicts. Yeah. I don't want to lock up an addict. What are we doing? How does that work? They get out, they go find their next pill to smoke. Let's get them the help so they don't go back to smoking fentanyl. It's really, really important. And we do not have enough beds. I will tell you, my office has filed 9 civil commitments, people who just were trying to pull out of the criminal justice system and get them the mental health help that they need. And so we ask judges, because they're really suffering. They're not helping themselves. They might hurt themselves. They might hurt someone else. We want to get them the help they need. There's not enough beds. We get people committed and there's nowhere to send them.
Right.
That's a problem.
No, I mean, I completely agree. And I want to be respectful of your time. So there's 2 more topics that I want to cover before we wrap here. So you had a couple months ago a pretty big piece on the mainstream news regarding ICE.
Yeah.
And today, as we're actually recording this, funny enough, so today's March 5th. This will be out in a couple of weeks. So, funny enough, today, Kristi Noem did get removed from her position. Another guy's going to come in and replace her. It seems that the federal government is rolling back in some ways what they're doing with ICE, and other ways they're reallocating resources. There's a lot of, I think to put it lightly, backpedaling going on right now from the federal government. And I go both ways on that, to be perfectly honest with you. As the governor of New Mexico, we're a border state. In one way or another, you're going to have to work with the federal government. It seems like a lot of governors are picking sides, but they're just like, we're going to kind of just give carte blanche to the federal government, to the feds, do what they want. And then there's other governors that are doing basically everything they can to block the federal government, specifically ICE, DHS, from coming in and doing their jobs. And obviously, we've seen a lot of ICE raids and a lot of confrontations in public with ICE go very wrong. Obviously, they've gone horribly wrong. They've been quite illegal, to be quite honest with you. I guess my question is, should you become the governor, how do you work in conjunction, as you mentioned earlier, with how law enforcement on all levels have been working together in New Mexico pretty well, and it's shown good results. Like, our violent crime is down, with the exception of the juveniles, but a lot of our big categories are going down. As the governor, how would you work in conjunction with the federal government to ensure that ICE is allowed to do their job as necessary, but boundaries aren't also being overstepped? And what boundaries are those for you specifically?
Sure. A lot of questions in that one.
Yeah.
It's
a heavy topic.
No, it is. Let me talk about a couple of things. First of all, I'm really happy Kristi Noem is no longer going to be DHS secretary, right? I mean, I think it's bipartisan.
What do you mean? She's doing a great job.
No.
She did a great job.
No, she did a horrific job, and I've been asking for her to be removed for some time now. So, I've never found myself complimenting Donald Trump a lot, but there's an instance where that needed to happen. But let me say this, a couple things. I don't care if I was running for governor or not. I would have sent the letter that was highly publicized to ICE anyways. I sent that letter because I'm a rule of law guy, as you can probably tell already. I believe in the rule of law. I think it's what separates us from the rest of the world. Our rule of law is solid. Our justice system is solid. It means something. Freedom isn't free. We have this thing called the Fourth Amendment. And it would be real easy for prosecutors and law enforcement to skip the Fourth Amendment, for example. Forget about unlawful search and seizures. Just let it go. Let it slide. Let law enforcement do whatever they want. No, I'm not that guy. And what I'm seeing, I think I'm horrified, like the rest of this country is, when we see people who are exercising their First Amendment rights getting shot. This is crazy stuff going on. This is not the country that I grew up in. And I would have sent that letter because I feel very strongly what I saw in videos, what I saw on national news, what I saw from all kinds of outlets was ICE agents not conducting themselves in a constitutional manner. In fact, so much not in a constitutional manner that it would be considered a crime if they did it in New Mexico. If you stop someone with no reasonable suspicion that they've already committed a crime, with no probable cause that they've committed a crime, with no judicial warrant, if you have none of those things, you don't get to walk up, pound out the side window, and say, get the F out of the car and prove to me that you're a United States citizen. That is not the United States of America. It's legal. And it is a crime because it is false imprisonment under the statute. It fits right in. You are not allowed to constrain, define, restrain anybody without lawful order. You can't do that. And so when they're doing that, you're darn right I'm going to raise my voice about it. I'm going to stand up to that all the time. That reminded me of what was going on in the 1930s in Europe, that kind of stuff. That is wrong in every way, shape, and form. So I took a very strong stance about it. And, you'd be surprised how many law enforcement agencies and law enforcement officers, some currently and some retired, some in the federal system, federal law enforcement officers, some in the state system, who said, you're right. We are a majority-minority state in New Mexico. We have more Hispanic people than others. We're going to start pulling people over because of the color of their skin? Because of their accent they have? That's bullshit.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. And so I'm very passionate about this issue because I do come from a legal background. I've been in federal courts and state courts and fought for human rights and civil rights my whole life. It's foundational. It's core for me. It's a core value set that I have. And what I'm seeing going on is unacceptable. So let me get to your second part of your question there. When you talk about what are we going to... New Mexico law enforcement, who, by the way, 99% of them do constitutional policing. I know that we have a bad apple here and there. Everybody has a bad apple in every kind of profession there is. But for the most part, we owe huge debt of gratitude to law enforcement. Huge debt of gratitude. But we have a crime problem here. Let's focus on the crime problem. Let's let the immigration authorities do what they want. I don't want anybody ever interfering with a federal investigation. Let them do what they do. But am I going to use state resources for immigration enforcement? Absolutely not. That's not the job of the state government.
I agree. No, I agree.
Our job right here is to take care of the people that are here. That's what we're going to do.
No, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, they have their job to do, and our state, county, city police have their job to do. And I think that when they need to work in conjunction, there should be no roadblocks to doing that. But at the same time, when any law enforcement is seen doing something that is out of their A, scope of practice, or B, just flat out illegal, that also needs to be addressed accordingly. Another point.
Can I add one last thing?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I want everybody to know, though, if you commit a violent crime in this county, I don't care what your legal status is. I'm going to prosecute you to the full extent of the law, and I'm going to hopefully put you away because that's what needs to happen to violent people in this community. I don't have any patience for it. It doesn't matter whether or not they're here legally or they do not have legal status. That doesn't matter to me. Well, I'm going to prosecute you.
No, and I'm very glad you said that. That was my second point about the immigration topic is what is the level of coordination between, so like let's say there is an illegal immigrant that commits a violent crime, they get arrested, they get sent to like MDC or wherever they go to get put away, and then federal law enforcement, ICE agents, DHS, they want to figure out who the illegal immigrants are in any facility, right? Let's put it that way, any facility, so they can then deport.
See, this is where
what does that look like?
No, so we don't ask, and it's not brought to our attention someone's legal status when they're charged with a crime. If someone's raped another person. By the way, let me say one thing. The immigrant community, and I understand, we were all told originally that this is going after the most violent criminals, and that's who they're going to go after to deport. I will tell you, it has scared the immigrant community so much that many of them are afraid to come forward and testify in a courtroom now because they witnessed a crime or they were a victim of a crime. They don't want to because they don't want to see their family deported, so they're not coming forward. That's not crime fighting. That's hurting us when it comes to crime fighting. I've been very vocal about this from the very beginning. When President Trump said he was going to deport everybody, I said, you're going to hurt our ability to prosecute people. And I know of instances of that really happening. But so we don't know the legal status of someone who's booked into jail for the suspicion of murder. We know what their alleged conduct is. We know what their crime is, what they're alleged to have done. We are going to prosecute them for that. Federal government puts detainers on the back ends of sentences all the time. In other words, when the person gets out, let's say they're convicted of armed robbery and they get 10 years. There's a detainer on them that says when this person has done his time, then they get deported to wherever. That's the detainer.
That was going to be my follow-up
That's
question.
the detainer.
Okay.
So here's the point that's really important to me. When you commit a violent crime, I want to prosecute you and convict you so that you're out of the community, and I know you're out of the community. As we know, many people who get deported come back.
Right.
So you get deported, you get sent down to Mexico or another country. You come back in a week later and you're committing crimes again. as opposed to me prosecuting
They
you,
have to restart
convicting
the
you,
whole cycle. Yeah.
convicting you, and you sitting in prison for 10 years. I know for those 10 years at least, you're
Where
not
you're
going
at.
not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah.
I don't know that if you just get deported.
No, I completely agree.
It's a big deal for me to be able to follow through on the prosecution. They want to put detainers on someone who's not here legally. At the end of that sentence, do what you want, immigration authorities. You have that right.
No, I agree. And one last question that I have
Sure.
for you before we get done. This has been a fascinating conversation, so thank you again for doing
you
this.
bet.
I'd love to do it again. So obviously it's in the news. It's not going anywhere. Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
There is obviously a huge question mark right now over Zorro Ranch and the property. To my understanding right now, it's owned by somebody out in Texas. I know that multiple individuals in our Congress that are representatives from New Mexico, I think primarily Stansbury's doing it right now. I couldn't get the list of names before I got here, but there is a proposition that's being put forward by representatives from New Mexico that are going to open up investigations into Zorro Ranch. A lot of people don't know this, but there hasn't been a formal investigation into Zorro Ranch, whether it was the 2007 arrest, the 2018 arrest, it hasn't happened. If you become the governor, before I even ask what you'd be open to doing, but like what can the governor do to basically assist and make sure that, because I mean, I think it'd be tough pressed to find someone that would be against any type of investigations into anything surrounding Jeffrey Epstein. But what could you do as the governor to ensure that investigations are happening on the Zorro Ranch property? Because I mean, after all these files have come out, and I've spent an absolutely inordinate amount of time reading these files, there may be anything there. The crime certainly happened there, ranging from obviously sexual assault to kidnapping, to trafficking, to possibly murder, and there's dead bodies buried there. There's a whole list of things nobody knows exactly what. What could the governor do to initiate investigations and ensure that those happen there?
So listen, just to put it in context, Jeffrey Epstein is without a doubt the most prolific, disgusting child sex trafficker in the history of this country. There's nobody even close. So,
I hope not.
And so much of it we're learning may have taken place at a place called Zorro Ranch right here in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Makes us all sick to our stomachs. And we owe a sense of accountability, transparency, and justice to the survivors and victims of Jeffrey Epstein. That means, and I'm so thankful for the House with their Truth Commission and Epstein investigation, that they've just set aside some money to do this. They're going to subpoena some people. And I'm so glad that the Attorney General's office has now opened up an investigation as well, opened it back up.
Is this the Attorney General's office here in New Mexico?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
So let's remember, let's count on our justice system a lot more than the federal justice system right now to get to the bottom of this one.
Yeah.
And so, between those two entities, you also have the next governor. The next governor has to lead and help the Attorney General lead with the members of the House and that committee, the law enforcement, the so important investigation of Jeffrey Epstein and what took place at Zorro Ranch. So the governor needs to be someone who can help lead that and really marshal all the resources. Look, it's going to take manpower. It's going to take a lot of investigators, a lot of detectives, if you will, figuring out what the hell happened out there. And for decades now, people have had cold case rape cases that have been sitting, the DNA has been sitting on a shelf. We have a unit in my office, for example, that is a cold case rape unit. We've convicted people. A year and a half ago, we convicted someone. We've convicted over 24, by the way, of old rape cases. One of them, their crimes were committed in 1988 to 1991. He raped 3 women. He's now doing the rest of his life, of course. We caught him driving a school bus. We matched up his DNA off the steering wheel. The point I'm trying to make is, I don't care how old it is. The facts need to determine where we're going with this, and we need to get to the bottom of it. And the next governor needs to lead that investigation. Respectfully, I would suggest that I'm that person because I've led a heck of a lot of criminal investigations in my life. I know what's going on. And when it comes to investigating crime, and we desperately need to get to the bottom of this for survivors and victims and for every New Mexican. We're all horrified by the idea that this may have taken place here in New Mexico. We heard about it on some island and that stuff. But right here in New Mexico, this kind of stuff was going on. Children, sex trafficked, right here. No, we're going to get to the bottom of it, especially when I'm your next governor.
I was going to say, if I was running your campaign, that'd be our whole statement was vote for me is a vote for taking down the Epstein class.
Well, we'll consider that.
That would be my whole
We will
thing.
consider that.
Well, listen, this has been very eye-opening. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this.
You bet.
Before we get done, where can everyone find your campaign website, social media, support the campaign, all that kind of stuff?
So go to the website. It's got all the social media listed on the website, but it's Bregman, FORNM.com. BREGMAN, FORNM.com.
Awesome. Well, best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
As far as I know, there's no debates coming up, which is very strange.
Yeah, I listen, you know this about me, maybe, or maybe not. I've been really ringing that bell a lot. I want debates. Voters deserve to know where the vision of their governor candidates are for the future of New Mexico. And I've been, I can't get my opponent somehow to agree to one.
Well, hopefully that happens at some point. Hopefully your opponent, Deb Holland, responds to Instagram messages or emails. That'd be sick, but whatever. But seriously, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you to your team. They were great. Sorry it took me a while to respond to an email, but it is what it is.
Good.
Sorry about that. Thank you everyone for listening and watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Okay.